guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking to you about divs. This is the first of two parts explaining how divs work and what they are. They're really important. If you didn't watch the conceptual video and you still don't get it after this video, I recommend you go there and watch it. My partner Samarth has made it, and if you like those types of conceptual videos, please tell us. We can create more of them, and we actually have ideas for a lot of different conceptual videos. So let's get started. What is a div? Well, you can think of it as a container or a block, not a block, a box, right? And inside the box, we keep elements in, like h1 tags, image tags, a tags. You'll learn that later. Just a whole sort of elements kept inside of a box. And we can use CSS selectors. You know how we select the image tag and then change the width and stuff? You can change a property of a div, and then all the elements inside that div will be changed. So you don't have to repetitively change things all at once. Now let's see this in action. First, creating a div. Really simple. Just like you create an image, you just say div, right? And then you leave a space for your elements inside, and then div. It works kind of like a body tag. You know how inside the body tag we have a whole bunch of stuff? Same thing with the div. Inside the div, make sure you indent, right? You indent like this. Of course, if you write body right here, if you write like each one here, it still would work. The problem is that it's just not clean. And I talked to you guys about this before as well. You want to make sure that your code is clean so that if anyone looks at it, like for example, as mentors, we can easily see different parts of your code and we can help you easier. So let's make a h1 tag. An oreo. How delicious. I think I spelled it wrong right here. Oh god. And then an h3 tag. Oh sorry, the h3 tag is how delicious. So let's put that right here. You know, this is just the general, like making a header for your website. We're basically going to be creating this. So it's very simple. As you can see, we're making an oreo. We have a header up here, and then the oreo has two cookies and the cream inside. So let's recreate that. We created the div. Now I want to show you what classes are. They're like names for the div, because later on, when you're creating your big projects, you're going to have like 10 divs, 12 divs, and they're going to do different things. And you can't just go to the CSS and say div, because then all the divs will be selected. So you have to give divs a certain class name. So let's actually move this down here. Okay, and let's give it a class name of header. You can give it a class name of anything you want. And then that doesn't really do anything to the code. Let's run it. It's the same thing, except the typo is fixed. And then finally, to create our oreo, we're going to need three different divs. We're going to need the cookie div, we're going to need the cream div, and then we're going to need another cookie div. We don't have to use the same div twice, or we don't have to recreate it. We don't have to say cookie and then cookie one. We can use the same name twice, which is why divs are really helpful. If let's say you have a template, you have a styling template for a div, you can use that div like over and over again, and it's just way more efficient as a coder program. So let's create that div class equals cookie, and then make sure you end it off. Div class equals cream, right? And then finally, div class equals cookie. Yes, we're gonna eat a lot of cookies. We're gonna look at a lot of cookies. Oh, this looks so good. Actually, it doesn't, but I wish my Oreos were this big. Sorry, that's a digression. So yeah, now let's look at the CSS. So we've reached our CSS. The main things we're going to be talking about is how to, of course, select a div and edit it, but we're also going to be talking about really important things, margin and padding. So it might be a bit confusing. You might have to search up some visuals to understand, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. And the simplest way to understand it is playing around with the numbers. You can see what they do to the div. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is something called a margin reset. I recommend you do this in any one of your big projects. So it goes like this: body HTML start margin 0. Sorry, margin is 0. Padding 0. We're going to see what that does later once we finish our website. Now the next part is, of course, changing our header. Let me just go ahead and create this code, and then I'll go through the different steps of what they do. So I have my code right here, the dot header, right? Oh yeah, and this is how you select it. You use dot header or dot class, the class name. So let's say we have a class of cookies, right? We'd use dot cookie and then the brackets. Now, what are some things you notice here? We have the background color of black. We have the color of white, right? Text align center. All of this is familiar. Now, the weird thing that might weird you out is the padding. What does that do? Well, like I said, play around with the numbers. First, let's see what happens if you don't have the padding. It seems like the space around the text expanded. So let's increase it by a bit, like 20, I think, right? So the div itself expanded. It didn't stretch in width per se, but in all directions from the text or the main part. It expanded outwards, 20 pixels from each direction, left, right, top, bottom. Now let's say we just wanted to expand from the top. We can just do padding top, and as you can see, only the top gets affected. Right now for headers, I like just doing padding 20. Usually I make it like really big. I like making it 50, right? Because a header is supposed to look big. Some people actually make it the entire page. It's up to you and your designing preferences. Now let's look at how we can create our Oreo. It's going to be using both the margin and the padding, so make sure you pay close attention. Okay, so I created the Oreo. It looks much more realistic right now because we're at a smaller screen. Let's go through the parts we know for the cookie. The width, 15%. If we increase that to 25%, of course, the cookie will stretch. Looks kind of weird. We also know what the padding does, right? I use percents now because it's just better to use. If you're confused at the differences between percents and pixels, you can ask us on the Discord, or you can look it up. But it's like the percent compared to the entire website rather than using exact pixels. And the reason why that's really helpful is because let's say you're on a small screen like this versus like a full screen like this, it'll have the same ratio. And once you get into like maybe like algebra 1, you'll understand what I mean by that. So if you're not in like an algebra course, don't worry too much about this. You can still stick with pixels. Now, border radius is a bit new. We do have a video on borders coming up, and if you don't understand this, I recommend you watch it. But basically, the border radius, if we didn't have it, you can see that it becomes more rectangular. But if we have like a 50% border radius, it becomes like circular, like a smushed up cookie. So I like putting at 10%, looks reasonable. It's not a complete rectangle. It's a bit curved. And then that's the same thing with the cream. The background color is black and the cream is a bit gray so that you guys can see it. And now the final thing is the margin. So while the padding expands inward out, like if you change the padding of the heading, it expands. The margin is what's outside, outside the div. So let's say if you had margin of 0 right here, the cream would move right here to the very left of the screen. Now what order does is put the same amount of margin on the left and the right. And this is what you're going to be using most of the time. You probably won't be specifying a margin. You'll just be saying margin auto. Maybe when you like start making your own like professional website, you might need to actually create like values for it. But right now you can stick with auto. And it basically, like I said, adds margins to the left and the right. Now in this video, we covered how to create a div using HTML, how to make a class for them, the reasons why you should make a class, how you select a class using the dot class name, right? And then we also talked about padding and margin. The final thing that we didn't talk about is the margin reset, which I said you should use for most of your websites. Now, you may not have noticed this, but let's see what happens if you do this. And it's more noticeable if we go full screen. You notice that white area right there? Really bugs me off. I don't know about you, but like I'd rather have it completely touching all the corners. That's because whenever we create a HTML file, it automatically has a margin, a certain specified margin on the outside of the website. That's why this is called a margin reset, because we already set the margin to 0, we set the padding to 0, and now if we reload the page, it's stuck, like no white space whatsoever. It looks clean. Now some of you might like that white space, some of you might even want more of that white space. It's all up to you. I'm just saying that a lot of professional programmers, they like using the margin reset. You don't have to. This is all your preference. Now, the one thing I would recommend you do is to try to recreate the Oreo thing that I did right here, but with a hamburger or like with an ice cream cone. And if you're not sure how to make the triangle, you can ask us. But try to recreate this design so you understand how you can create divs. And you can also post this on our submissions page as well. I know this video has been long. The second video will be a bit shorter, but it's going to be really advanced. So make sure you pay attention for that, the second part of the divs video. And I'll see you later.